Welcome to week 9 of the Golden Oldies. This week we are talking about the Noahic covenant. Our hope is that you will walk away understanding the Noahic covenant, God's faithfulness to his people, and how the covenant relates to us today. So I want you guys to start off by reading Genesis 8:20 through 9:17 and 3 questions that y'all are going to answer. Number 1, in this passage, God is making a covenant with Noah. Recall what a covenant is. Number 2, the Noahic covenant is important because it's unconditional. Define what an unconditional covenant means. And last question, this covenant was not a promise just to Noah. It was also a promise to who or what? Answer those questions in your group. A covenant is a promise that God makes to his people that he will never break. The second question was, define what an unconditional covenant is. An unconditional covenant is based on God's faithfulness alone and has nothing to do with us or Noah in this story. So this covenant was not just a promise to Noah. It was also a promise to who? All of creation, right? Every creature and every generation to follow. So our next set of questions are about this covenant. What was the covenant? What was the agreement with Noah? The next question is, God sent the flood because of man's evil heart. What attribute does this show us of God? The next question, identify in the passage where we read that God sends a sign of his covenant with Noah, never to destroy the world again. What was this sign? And last question, the rainbow should remind us of God's mercy and faithfulness to his people. But society has drastically changed the meaning of what a biblical rainbow means to what? Answer these questions in your group. So the sign that God sent as a covenant to remind us of his faithfulness to his people is a rainbow. But society nowadays has drastically changed what a rainbow means in our everyday life to a non-biblical organization that is not in line with God's divine law. So we have some deeper questions to ask now about how we can apply this to our life. The story of Noah is a little different than this sweet Bible story for kids. It's really about God's judgment on sin. But God's promise to Noah to never flood the earth again highlights God's faithfulness to Noah and to us, his people. So in what ways does God show faithfulness in your life? Discuss this in your group. Okay, so we are moving into some deeper questions here. God says he will never destroy the earth with a flood again. But in 2 Peter 3, he says the world will be destroyed by fire, referred to as the day of the Lord. Does this mean that God breaks his promises? And the next question, God hates sin. That's why he flooded the earth, because of man's wicked heart. But he promised to never flood the earth again, despite man's wicked heart. But if God is a holy and righteous God who hates sin, how are we free from his judgment? Talk about this in your group. So in 2 Peter 3, does God break his promise when he says that the earth will be destroyed by fire? No, God directly said he will never destroy the earth by flood again. He didn't say he would never destroy the earth again. The fire will cleanse the earth of sin when Christ returns in preparation for the new heavens and the new earth for all of God's people. And the second question, how are we free from his judgment if we have a holy God who hates sin? By Christ. God sent his only son to bore his wrath on the cross, and he made him who was sinless, sinful, to save us from judgment. So speaking of us being free from sin, God provided a way for Noah, his family, and the animals to be saved in the ark. Today, we need to be saved from our sinful ways and be made new. What is our ark? And the second question, defend why the Noahic covenant is important to us today. discuss this in your group. So, what is our ark today? If God provided a way for Noah and his family and the animals to be saved in the ark that God led Noah to build, and we today need to be saved from our sinful ways, what is our ark? It's Jesus Christ. He sacrificed his life on the cross to save us from our sins, just as God rescued Noah from the flood. And why is the Noahic covenant important to us today? What does this mean for us, this old story in the Bible? Well, God will not destroy the earth by flood, regardless of our sinful nature. The Noahic covenant points to God's mercy on his people and his faithfulness to his word. The covenant also points to Christ and his work on the cross to save us from our sins. So, the Noahic covenant. It's the covenant God made to Noah, creation, and all of his people to never flood the earth again. This is based on God's faithfulness and mercy on his people. He sealed this promise with a rainbow so that we should be reminded of God's promise when we see a rainbow. Just as God provided a way for Noah to be saved, he also provides us a way to be saved through Jesus Christ. And that is the Noahic covenant.